It's time for Ask Mike Mondays. Mike answers one listener's question every week. Here's Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to Ask Mike Mondays. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. Joining me today, the mayor, the governor of Beckerville, USA, Mr. Michael Becker.
Hey, Paul.
Michael, how are you?
Things are good. We're now getting out of the summer into fall, so glad the heat is mostly behind us here.
Mostly behind, but we're still running our air conditioners. And so since you have almost thousands and thousands of units that you oversee that have air conditioning, how are the air conditioners doing these days?
Much better today than in July. So, it's kind of the AC season when you kind of get into May and throughout, August and early September is real hot in Texas. So that's one of the things that all the maintenance guys and all the properties are, constantly having to deal with and stay on top of it, just making sure all the ACs are up and running and dealing with blown capacitors and fan motors and charging Freon and all that good stuff.
It's like almost running a small city. That's why we call him the mayor of Beckerville, USA. I mean, Michael Becker and his group at SPI have bought over 8,000 doors. They currently own about 5,800 units, almost $700 million in assets under management, $1 billion in transactions closed. So they are movers and shakers. And we appreciate him coming in and sharing a little bit about his platform of owning real estate and giving us some inside information about what things are going on, what we should know. One of the things that you should know is come to Texas, October 24th, 25th.
Getting close.
Getting close. We keep banging the table on this, but the Old Capital Multifamily Conference over at the House of Blues in Dallas. So this is a national conference. This is not just a regional conference. We'll have 600-700 people from all across the United States. It is the conference you want to be at if you want to be in the multifamily game and kind of understand it. Learn from the best, whether it's syndication you want to learn about, whether it is PPMs through SEC attorneys, or listen to some property management companies, some brokers, some of really what's going on. It's where the rubber meets the road. And if you're thinking about getting into the business and you want to kind of solve problems and have the right answers, this is the conference to go to. Our keynote speaker this year is Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz, winner of a national championship or two at the University of Notre Dame, went on to other universities, but just a fantastic speaker. We have him kind of talk a little bit about doing the right thing. Do the right thing, not only for your property, but for your limited partners, your bank. And, make sure you make this, we want you to take care of the business and do it the right way. So listen to Lou Holtz come in and spend some time. Michael, what do you think about that conference?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, just kind of if you're listening to this podcast, obviously you're an apartment nerd, you're into apartments. And I think we try to have one of the most no nonsense kind of practical, tactical podcasts out there. That's kind of the niche that we've carved out for ourselves in the marketplace, and our 40,000 plus downloads we get every single month. So if you want to get actual real life information that you can take and go back home and apply, or maybe meet a contact of a really high level successful person, whether that be someone that you can either invest with as a passive or find people that invest with you as a lead, or deepen a broker relationship or one of the other vendors there, this is the place to be. And, like I said, I don't think Paul's charging enough. I think the relative to the value you're going to receive in this thing is certainly one of the better conferences out there. This is not why you buy real estate and, kind of the real high level stuff that a lot of these other people do. This is real tactical, practical, actual knowledge with, real life players in the marketplace.
So thanks for the good words, Michael.
Yeah.
All right.
Watch out, Paul will raise the prices on you.
Now you just buy me a drink when you see me in Dallas. We appreciate that. A question that came up on the platform today, Mike, we often talk about the positive reasons of syndication and investing in multifamily, but what are the worst case scenarios as a GP and an LP if deals go bad? Not the most likely case in a bad deal, but the worst case.
Yeah, I think worst case, if you're an LP, you invest with a crook and they steal your money. That is certainly one of the worst case scenarios, that someone is just basically committing fraud or Ponzi scheme, and you're investing with them, and all you go to zero. So that'd be an absolute horrible outcome, and I've heard horror stories of that. So that is something that you need to at least have your antenna up when you're vetting sponsors. If you're a limited partner, vetting sponsor track record, getting references, making sure you have a good level of comfort that you're dealing with an ethical and above board operator.
Yep.
The second, I think, worst case scenario as an LP is that you invest with an incompetent operator and you lose all your money, right? So that's the other one, that you invest with someone that doesn't know what the hell they're doing, and they buy a crappy property in a crappy location. They are undercapitalized, and you hit a little soft patch, and everything has to go absolutely perfect on the deal for them to be able to come anywhere close to their pro forma. So they're being overly optimistic and the way they underwrite the deals and being aggressive in location and, not know what they need to know to protect your investment. So those are kind of your two most likely worst case scenarios that pop to my mind right here. As a GP, obviously if you do one of those two things, that on the opposite end of it, that's obviously not good. Either you're overly optimistic on the amount of returns you could do or the location, or you don't properly capitalize a deal, or you improperly place a debt relative to the business strategy or things like that. Some of the other things that I think would be bad as a GP is if one of the things that we're constantly doing is we're rating our limited partners, so like as limited partners vets us as sponsors, we kind of, we'll qualify the limited partners, so who's real, who's not real, who's going to be a pain in the butt in the future, all these things that you kind of learn as you have 700, 800 unique investors like we've had at this point, doing 1,200 K1s a year. You learn the people that, you want to deal with and the people you don't want to deal with on an ongoing basis. It's kind of like you get married when you invest in these deals, and you got a multiple year relationship with these people that you have to, go forward with. So if you don't like each other, then that's not a good relationship. And usually people present themselves early on in a relationship. So the choice is whether you choose to recognize it and take action, or you ignore all the symptoms on the front end. So these are all things that are pretty easy for me to say now that we've been successful and raised, hundreds of millions of dollars of capital and been successful in a lot of deals. But, every time I say, hey, should I take this guy's money or should I not take this guy's money? He's, committed to do something in a certain time frame, didn't do what he said he was going to do. He's asking a bajillion questions. He's clear he's not paying attention to it. I know he's going to change the way he holds title in the future, and generally he's kind of wearing me out. And every time hey, I need that extra 50 grand or that extra 100 grand, you take someone in, usually 100% of the time I come back and regret that decision, 6 months, a year down the road when they do exactly what I knew they were going to do on the front end. I just chose to ignore it. So we do a pretty good job about trying to weed that out. And, most people, 99% of the people that will invest with you are good quality people. And as long as you communicate effectively, consistently, set out proper expectations on what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, and you as a sponsor lay those things out for them. Most people are good. It's just, there's that random person that for whatever reason, either their personality or you just combined personalities are at conflict that, it's usually just not a good idea to take that capital. And again, it's much easier to say that today from my position than it was, when we were starting out and you needed every dollar that you could coming in the front door.
But let's talk about you starting out, because really it goes back to when you were a banker at one of the large national banks, and you were loaning money to operators of multifamily properties, and did that for a long period of time. So you saw a lot of things of how some of these operators did not do it the right way. Can you give me some clues about where you became the crypt keeper and you had to take the properties back?
Yeah, one of the ones that comes, a good example is we had a sponsor that had to be replaced by his passive investors, and take a reflect back. So it was a loan that Paul and I made to a guy, and he had done, this is probably his, fourth or fifth deal, maybe, what I'm thinking of. And Paul knows exactly what I'm talking about without even saying it. So he had been successful on multiple deals, but then Paul been my first loan to make to him. And then Paul introduced, I knew who he was, and we started working together. And I always got the sense that he was buying a property that was a pretty distressed property, and all the other properties a little bit more of a, lighter value add, or kind of a little bit more turnkey. And I always thought he was kind of like a weak person, to be just blunt about it. Like he wasn't, very tough-minded person.
Yeah, so, he wouldn't step up to honor his agreements or his commitments, not only to his limited partners, but also to the bank, but also to the tenants too. I mean, he was kind of going to get pushed around by his tenants.
Yeah, it just seemed like he was just kind of like a weak, had a weak constitution. And, this is not a weak business when you're doing big repositions of apartment complexes and, C locations, right? And then we get in the deal, and then he, due to his kind of lack of interpersonal ability to be a strong leader, then things started going sideways. And then he didn't know how to deal with it. And then he stopped reporting to his investors and wouldn't send out financial statements and wouldn't return phone calls, and, kind of snowball. And they got to the point where all the investors were just so nervous, and they kind of basically got together, voted him out essentially, and replaced him as a lead in the deal. And the next guy came in, turned it around. They sold it and made some money, and, it was all good. But that was kind of symptoms of, or signals of what the future was going to hold was available to everyone. We just all chose not to pay attention to it. on the front of the deal because we thought the deal was good, but the leader and the team was wrong. So you can have the greatest deal ever, and your captain can put it in the ground, and that's pretty much what he did. He was fortunate the market was he bought it right, and the market was strong. That
if the market had not been strong and it had just been a normal market,
foreclosure,
he would have wiped everybody out, and it would have been a foreclosure, and that would have been another black mark. But again, keys of that thing is, lack of communication. He was not communicating not only to his limited partners on the deal, but was not communicating to the lender. And if you're not pushing out your monthly, quarterly, yearly reports to the lender, and again, this is not single family business. When the money goes, you have to still have a relationship with the lender and the servicer to make sure that they understand a little bit more about what's going on and what the financial outlook is of the property. So if you go dark on them, it's not good. And if you're a limited partner, you're starting to get your K1s not on a timely basis. They're coming at the end of the year for transactions that were done the year before. That's not good. So, lack of communication between the folks. And what the lender can do, the money's out the door. So the lender can force the hand to replace the general partner in the deal, but also too is anybody who had signed on that deal. They can go from being a non-recourse KP, a non-recourse key principal, to being a recourse key principal. So where you thought you were signing a deal that was not going to affect your personal balance sheet, hello. If that general partner is not honoring what he's supposed to be doing, you can take it from being non-recourse to recourse in a stroke of a check on a new document saying that since you guys have not been doing well, that's a bad boy covenant you're violating, not getting the documentation to us on a timely basis. We're going to make this a recourse loan. So don't do that. Be a good boy or a good girl. And then also too is that if you are doing that type of stuff, whether you're a general partner, don't look for doing any future business with Fannie Mae or any of the agencies. Once you have a foreclosure or you're not doing the repairs to your property, you're not going to get asked back to Fannie Mae. You're going to be on the bench until you can solve a problem or time goes by or something. You're going to look for different ways of financing those deals, whether it's a bank transaction or a CMBS. So if you're outside of doing the right things for Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, they are going to put you on the bench. And now you've taken away 3/4 of the way to finance apartments. You might as well go selling soft serve ice cream at Andy's or something else because you're no longer have the capacity to be a syndicator out there.
And that guy we talked about is out of the business now. So
he is out of the business.
He hadn't owned an apartment in 6 years in the best economy and one of the best markets in the entire country.
Yeah. So I think that's what our general theme at our conference is really do the right thing. Do the right thing for your lender. Do the right thing for your building. Make sure you put money back in the property. Do not take all the money out of the property trying to pay these rates of return to your investors. And then treat your investors as your brothers and sisters and communicate them and over-communicate them all the time about what's going on. And I'll brag on Mike. I can't think of a person who sends out as much good information with bad information about what's going on. You've got to be upfront with these people. You have too much of their own money that's involved in these deals that is at risk. And a lot of these guys who've just got in the business, say 2-3 years ago, have no experience. They have no idea what they're doing to a certain extent. If you're a limited partner in a deal, have them come down to the multifamily conference down in Dallas and learn a little bit more about what's going on. So, come on down, have them come down and educate themselves a little bit more. Anything to add on that one?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's one of the things I like to say. I have a bunch of little analogies, but when people invest with you, it took me a while to figure this, or it didn't take me a while to figure this out, but I knew this, and then, eventually I kind of really understood it once you start taking other people's money in. But when people invest with you, you have their money, and then if you don't communicate with them, they think that you stole their money. So make sure, you communicate on a regular pre-described interval, and the good, the bad, it kind of is what it is. And these all these numbers, the other thing I like to say is every projection, every pro forma I have ever done has always been wrong, right? So either we do better or we do worse, but you never hit exactly what you think you're going to do, and you can go out and execute and have a perfectly executed business plan, and the stuff out of your control can come up and pop up. Like a few episodes ago, I mentioned with the yield maintenance rising on one of our deals, and we had executed absolutely flawlessly, and then boom, that something out of my control comes and just extends our timeline. And then the inverse is true. You could be, a bad operator in a good market and still get out of it. So, but at the end of the day, I think as we get long in the cycle, as we kind of head into, whenever the next downturn kind of comes and pops its head up, I think that's that's what's going to separate the good from the bad. Is that's when you really realize who is a better operator and who is a weaker one, and that's when it really becomes the most valuable.
That's right. Cash is king in this business to a certain extent. It's kind of a fine line that we have to walk between giving the cash out to the investors and holding the cash back to operate these properties just in case we come into a storm in the future. And I would tell you right now, to where we're at right now is a little bit of a yellow flashing light, is accumulate cash as much as possible in these deals. Because if your plan was at the beginning, again, let's go back to those pro formas. I've never seen a pro forma at the beginning that wasn't flawless on these deals. But not everybody is going to anticipate having concessions, having lowering rents on these properties, having more money that's necessary to do rehab and repairs, holding the properties instead of 3 years to 6 or 7 years. Sometimes you don't have enough cash to hold these properties. I would say hold the cash. Be a little bit more respectful on rates of return to the limited partners. Be a little bit more truthful. And, people need a rate of return. Some of them are spoiled thinking they're going to get 14, 20% rates of return on a yearly basis. That's not the number. It's half of that. It's a half of that. But people will invest with you if you tell them what your expectations are in the future, that there's going to be cash flow out there. I've seen people not get sued for over communicating versus under communicating. People will get sued and you will lose money and you'll have to go to court. And that's nothing that you want to participate in. So a good question. I'm on my soapbox. I'm going to get off of it. I've just seen so many deals that have been set the right way. Some of the deals right now, I just don't think there's enough cash to hold on if we have to hold these properties for a longer period of time.
That's right, because you can't keep flipping these deals every 2 years for perpetuity. At some point, someone's going to have to own these deals a little bit longer.
Amen, brother. All right. So, Michael, tell us a little bit more about SPI.
Yeah, so if you guys want to find more information about what we do, that's my company, SPI Advisory, which is, we focus on identifying high quality opportunities and, tying them up and raising, putting some of our own money in, as well as syndicating the capital from other people. The best way to find out more information really is go to a company's website, which is www.spiadvisory.com. That's SPI like spy, advisory.com. And on there, you'll find a contact us page. Fill that out. And I'm always happy to have a 10 to 15 minute telephone call with listeners I meet off the podcast.
That's great. Some great information. Michael, thanks for sharing it with us. Again, Michael Becker, I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.